Can you all see the kind of the home screen of the presentation? Okay, good. I don't like that it minimizes everybody on the side, so I'll kind of toggle back and forth between showing the PowerPoint and going back to the grid of all. Okay, that was weird. You all heard that, right? Like it was replaying what YouTube was recording back to me about 30 seconds after I said it. So I just muted it. Okay.
I didn't hear anything.
Okay, that's weird. Should we go ahead and get started, knowing that a few other people might kind of be trickling in?
Sure.
Okay. Let me go back to. I'll go back to the view of all the grid here for introductions in a minute. But just to kind of kick it all off, there is the agenda for the meeting tonight. Really, the bulk of the meeting will be the comprehensive planning presentation, but we do have some kind of committee business items to take care of towards the end of the meeting. So I imagine, number 3 will take quite a bit of time, and then the rest of the items will be kind of as long or as short as we're wanting to make it. It's kind of weird. We've been together as a group, but it's mostly been in the context of comprehensive planning and strategic planning meetings. So we have not officially met as a group since last October in kind of an official committee capacity. And a lot of that's due to the comprehensive planning process. And then COVID has, of course, just kind of thrown us all for a loop. So it's really nice to just get back to some of the fun stuff and some of the progress that we've been working on. Let me get out of this screen real quick. Okay. Where did that go? Sorry, I have too many screens going on. I've lost my controls for the meeting. I don't know where they went. Okay.
Hi, Oscar.
Well, let's go ahead. I'm going to work on bringing it back to the grid, but I definitely want to make sure that we're introducing the committee members to Future IQ that's on the call, and for sure make sure that the new people get to introduce themselves. I saw that Callie was on, and I haven't noticed if Gerald was on yet. Let me scroll through. I don't think that he is there yet, but we at least have one new member. So maybe we can kick it off. Maybe Alderman Uladall, you can start and then go to Alicia and then just kind of go through the committee one at a time, not only to introduce yourself to Callie, but let Future IQ and JSA kind of know who you are and maybe how long you've been on the committee.
I'm Alderman Uladall. I was on the EDC for a couple of years before I got elected alderman. So it'll be looks like not a lot of new faces and new ideas to help enrich Smithfield with some economic development ideas. So let's get going.
Maybe Alicia, you want to go next?
Sure, I'm just sitting here smiling like a dork. Yeah, I'm Alicia. I've been on the EDC for 2 years. I own Not Too Shabby Boutique on the square, and I'm also president of our downtown Missouri Main Street group.
Let's see, Kelly, you're next on my screen and the first one in the meeting. So how about you next?
I am Kelly Kabilski and the owner of Children First Montessori downtown, and I have been on the EDC for a year now.
Maybe Carol next?
This is actually my first official EDC meeting.
Yeah.
So I'm with the Chamber of Commerce here in Smithville, and I've been involved in all of this, the strategic planning and the comp planning meetings and so forth. And of course have always kind of reported to the EDC via our chamber updates. But this is, like I said, my first official real meeting. So glad to be here.
Dan Hartman, you're next for me.
All right, Dan Hartman. I've been on the EDC a year. I work obviously as a realtor in the commercial space. I also have a real estate team, fairly new this year, but we have 6 people on the team now. So we're growing, and it allows me to really promote Smithville. And so that's what's neat about this EDC and all the members that are here as business owners. And it's pretty awesome.
Maybe Bruce Kramer?
Yes, I've been on for a year and a half. I own Kramer Capital Management, and we still live in Gladstone, but I actually have a residential property that we just bought 2 weeks ago in Smithville. How about that? So there you go.
And maybe Dr. Schutz?
Yeah, I'm Todd Schutz, and I'm the superintendent of schools here in Smithville. And I don't know how long I've been on. I was trying to think. I know Brian Fulmer was mayor, and someone was going off the EDC, and the Board of Aldermen decided that, along with the mayor, that seat, they would like someone from the schools in that seat. So that's when I came on board, and I think of the people that are now on the EDC, I think Dan was the only one that was around on the EDC as a business owner, not an alderman when I came on. So it's been quite a while, I guess.
And Callie, I think you're up. So if you would like to, this is your official meeting. If you would like to tell the group a little bit about yourself and just say hi. You're on mute.
There. Now can you hear me? Yeah, okay. My name's Callie Maxfield, and I am a new member of the EDC. And I own Kids Closet in Smithville. I teach preschool 2 days a week at Grace Community Church, and I coach gymnastics a couple nights a week. I have 2 kiddos, 4th grade and 2nd grade at Horizon, and a whole slew of animals in our house.
She taught Oscar, so Oscar's trying to get her attention, it looks like.
And I just saw Oscar
My name is
today.
Callie.
Hi, buddy.
And then the last new member who's not on the call right now, he might be joining later, is Gerald Elston, and he is a relatively new resident in the city of Smithville and works with a nonprofit community neighborhood building organization. So we'll be sure to get him introduced the next time that he is available. And then just for sure, Brian Hove, this would have been his last meeting, and we're just very thankful. He's been a member for at least the 3 years prior. And of course, his restaurant in town just does great things for the community, and luckily has done really well in COVID, and is just really busy. And so we're really thankful for the time he's been able to commit, and he'll for sure be an important player in economic development going forward. So be sure to tell him thank you if you see him kind of around town. And then we've got a couple staff members, Cynthia Wagner, City Administrator, and Jack Hendricks. Development Director. You guys can say something or not, it's up to you, but they're mostly excited to hear from Leslie, John, and Heather about the economic development piece of the comprehensive planning process. So Heather, Leslie, and John, maybe before you all start, you can go ahead and present, introduce yourself and let everybody know what your role is. But if the committee is okay with it, I thought we'd just kind of dive right in with them. That way they can give their presentation and we can have some good conversation while we're still fresh. And then they can hop off if they want once we start doing some kind of committee business. So let's see, do you guys have a presentation and do you need me to share the screen for you?
We don't have a presentation,
Okay.
but Leslie, do we need any screen sharing? Or frankly, I don't mind kind of seeing everybody's faces, and I figure
it's
this can be
nice.
kind of interactive and.
Yeah, well, you all let me know if you need me to pull up a map or any part of the comp plan. I can easily pull that up. So go ahead and take it away.
Sure. Well, by way maybe of brief introductions, I know I recognize a lot of familiar faces and know a lot of you have been involved kind of through the process. I'm John Stover. I'm the managing partner of John Stover and Associates on the project team.
I'm Heather Brannigan.
And I'm Leslie.
Oh, there we go. Go ahead, Leslie.
I'm Leslie Deacon. I work at John Stover and Associates. I've been also leading the charge from our side of the equation for the comp plan through the process. And Heather?
Yep. I'm with Future IQ. I actually started way back with the think tank during the visioning process. So I've been on this journey quite a while with you.
Yeah, and thank you for having us speak with you all. I think this is exactly the right, frankly, time and type of conversation to have. So definitely appreciate that. And it's been a fun process, and we're kind of nearing the end. And special thanks to Jack and Cynthia, who've been kind of the guiding light throughout and have been very excellent to work with. And I think that this can be a pretty informal conversation, and we're really eager to hear what you all have to say and kind of integrate your feedback and answer any questions. Kind of what we hope to potentially touch base on is just review what is the comprehensive plan again? What's the deal with this? Go over where we're at in the process. Maybe a couple like really big picture takeaways or implications, especially as it pertains to you all, to the Economic Development Committee and kind of the types of organizations affiliated with you all, the Chamber of Commerce, the Main Street, and so forth. And talk kind of next steps for you all within the comprehensive plan, but mainly just kind of turn it over for discussion, answer any questions, talk anything out, and so forth. So with that, maybe I'll turn it over to Leslie, and myself and Heather obviously jump in at as you see fit throughout.
Perfect. So obviously, again, we're recognizing a ton of familiar faces, so most of this will probably be redundant at this point. But again, just a refresher for anybody who might not know too much what a comprehensive plan is. The comprehensive plan is really the city's vision document for the next 10 years. So from 2020 to 2030, really outlining the city's vision and identifying some implementation strategies and action steps to create that vision over the 10 years. We've worked with many of you all at the EDC through our various task forces, and Heather's worked with you all during the strategic visioning work. The core organization of our comprehensive plan is really rooted in kind of the end result of the strategic plan and those 5 pillars, which resulted into our task forces, right? So our economic development task force underneath that pillar for Smithville of strengthening businesses and economic development opportunities. Has anybody seen the comp plan document so far or taken a peek at it? It was posted on our portal, and I think it's been sent out through email.
Yeah, Leslie, all 108 pages. I have seen it.
Right.
Slowly making my way through it as I can. Good bedtime reading. But no, actually, it's very interesting. It's a vibrant document, and job well done to you, Heather, John, and the Future IQ crew.
I can't believe you haven't read every single
you.
word.
If we had about like 2/3 of the group that said, hey, they opened the document, or they at least like know that the document's out there, I would have been very, very impressed by that. So I'm glad some of you are actually even diving into it and reading it. I wanted to just kind of give you a little bit of a framework, particularly for the EDC, and kind of give you the tidbits on the areas in that 108 pages that are most relevant to you all as your committee role. And that's really going to be the beginning of the document within the strategic pillar core within economic development. You'll see that towards the beginning, approximately page 20 or so in the comp plan or section 3, where we go through all 5 of the strategic pillars. That's going to have some good insights on kind of paving the way for the future for economic development. And most importantly, it kind of wraps into the 5 goals that we've identified through our engagement process and with all of you all at the task forces of economic development for Smithville over the next 10 years. And those 5 goals are prioritizing a vibrant downtown, leveraging Smithville Lake as an economic driver, targeting and attracting key industries, allowing and generating industrial growth in the city, and then lastly, fostering strategic partnerships. So this should all sound very familiar if you were involved in the task forces. And I believe several of you might have been in multiple task forces too. So that overlaps a little bit with some of our other pillars like small town feel in particular. If you kind of take from that page, I believe it's again page 26, that those vision goals land on, and then kind of go into towards the end of the document, the implementation matrix. That's really the key part for the EDC. And you'll notice in that implementation matrix, we break it down by pillar. So sorting back to that economic development pillar in that implementation matrix. And then we take each of those 5 goals that we've worked through as a task force, and we identify action steps for various stakeholders and players throughout the city. The economic development pillar obviously includes a lot of action steps where we identify the committee as a key player, or a key entity to be at the table for implementing some of these ideas. As a few of you mentioned, involvement in the Main Street and the chamber, you'll see those groups also listed as players, so some partnerships can form and some conversations with the different entities in Smithville that are really centered around economic development. I believe all of you saw these action steps towards the end of September. We sent out a survey to the various task force members to help us identify priorities for some of these action steps. The priority column in that implementation matrix in the comp plan is really all from your input, the planning commission input, other task force members, et cetera. So much of this document, again, is really your document. We're just kind of organizing it, framing it up for you, and laying the pathway for the next 10 years. So that's really big picture what you'll see in the document. I also have this pulled up on my screen if there's anybody that wants to dive into a particular section or have some really specific questions. But I think with this intro, if there's no questions again on kind of what a comp plan is and how this is a tool for the city and for you all, we can maybe dive into some conversations and reactions. John, did you have anything to add?
No, other than, well, maybe elaborate just a little bit on kind of the timing and kind of potential next steps and kind of when we fully pass on the baton and what that looks like.
Yeah. So right now what you have been either emailed or what you'll see on the portal is the draft version of the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan ultimately goes through the planning commission. So we've been meeting with them every month for the past few months to get this process moving along. We did our presentation of the draft right before it was posted for public comment and sent out and distributed. So any feedback that you all would like to provide within the comprehensive plan, if we can receive that feedback in the next week or so. Is that the correct timing, Heather? Perfect. We're going back to Planning Commission on November 10th for the Planning Commission to, fingers crossed, hopefully put the final, finally adopt the comprehensive plan and then recommend it to the Board of Aldermen. So we're nearing the very end of the process. If you have lingering thoughts or areas that we haven't gotten into as much detail in the comprehensive plan or in our task force conversations, like now's the time to share those insights.
Yeah. Yeah. And as Leslie said, you know, kind of speaking specifically to the economic development section, what, you know, and the kind of end output is the implementation matrix or particular strategies that are steps or action items to help reach that shared vision or goal that the city has identified pertaining to economic development and the other pillars. And what those really kind of serve on are almost a menu of options, or like, here's what in an ideal scenario, based on priority, based on kind of realistic steps that can be taken, is what we would recommend kind of the players, the folks listening in on this call and the other kind of partners and players throughout the city to undertake in terms of steps. But that's really, it's not the end all and be all. It's not the specific subtle actions necessarily. And there may not be the will or capacity to undertake all of them. So the kind of next step is for folks to decide, okay, where is the will and the capacity? What is the right steps for the players that be to kind of continue moving the bar in partnership with the city to reach these objectives. So happy to dive in either on specific items or talk big picture or just talk things out in general, and definitely eager to hear all your thoughts.
John, what page is that matrix on?
78.
Okay. So my thought,
at least the economic development section starts at 78. And
okay.
Yeah.
So my thought before, you know, we get too much into it is that once it's adopted by the Planning Commission and the board, is that basically this matrix is what the EDC would be kind of diving into next. So we've been talking a lot about what's our strategic plan, what are our goals, what are our kind of strategies. And I would envision that, again, once it's all adopted and rolled out to the community, that then we would really get into this matrix pretty specifically and decide, kind of like what John just said, is this where we want to go? Do we want to, you know, put together a timeline and really start to kind of work on action steps?
Yeah. And actually, and speaking of that, Nikki, something that was really helpful to us and just kind of impressive and really nice to see was the prior work that had been done, especially pertaining to economic development strategy and strategic plan. And I know we've told a number of you this, but that we thought that was a really high quality document and process, and aligned nicely, and frankly gave some of the tools and kind of specific work to achieve some of these things. So when we say things like, you know, the city should decide, you know, through what kind of process to provide incentives to attract certain types of businesses. Well, that's already been laid out. There's kind of a few options that have already been identified and articulated in that process. So I think that these documents work really well in tandem with each other.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of ways, let me think. So Alderman Uladol probably would have been part of that, and for sure Jack. In a lot of ways, that document was just kind of ahead of its time. I mean, it came out in 2016, and I'd say the community, the board, the organization wasn't necessarily kind of ready or right there with the document. I mean, a lot of the points in there were great and still very relevant. And I'd say now everything's just kind of gelling.
Yeah, it's great to hear.
Nikki, what is the timeline? Can you kind of overview for us as the EDC? I know it's going through planning and zoning again and aldermen. What's the timeline? What's the mayor's goal to kind of have this implemented?
I haven't had a specific conversation with the mayor on timelines. I mean, you know him, he's working on stuff all the time yesterday. So, you know, and we all do, that's the thing is between these meetings, everyone around the table is involved in economic development in some way, shape, or form. So we're all basically moving towards these goals in different ways already. I will propose, and I was going to propose at the end of this meeting, that basically in January, we as a group put together our strategic plan for the next year. And really practically, it's just because November and December between basically these meetings fall on Thanksgiving and Christmas. So it's just a hard time to get different groups together. But basically that would give staff time to work with the mayor, you know, to work with Cynthia and put together our internal timeline and expectations so that we as a committee can make sure that we're kind of lining up with that. So I would think that really in January is when we'll really start to kind of get our teeth into this. But yeah, in the meanwhile, I mean, the mayor probably can and does and will call all of you and have different, you know, ideas, thoughts, and ways that we're already moving towards a lot of these goals.
If I can just ask real quick, I actually printed off those pages starting at 78 because I wanted to have, I would want to look at this while we were talking about it. So I get the priority, the time frame. I'm a little confused as to what the clocks mean and how those tie in with, and I see that you've got on some of them bold step, but can you kind of, and I'm sure it's in here somewhere, but clarify what that means?
And we look at this loosely into three categories for time frame. First, near term, so that 0 to 3 years, then midterm, and then long term. So the midterm is 3 to 7 years approximately, and long term is looking, 7 to 10, given that this is a 10-year comprehensive plan. So when the first clock is shaded in, that's going to be your near term. If it's the second clock, your midterm, your third clock, long term, et cetera. Some of these action steps are going to be going on throughout all 10 years. They're not necessarily tied into one specific time frame. So you'll see when all three of those clocks are shaded in, that's an ongoing task action item. On the very, very first page of the implementation section, or chapter 7, we go into a little bit of detail defining these different classifications. One of the components that was very important in this process of the comprehensive plan, and an element that we've, as a team internally, as a team with Cynthia and Jack, and then within the task forces, have really prioritized trying to think big, trying to think innovatively, and really be strategic in those innovative decisions. So we wanted to pull that into the implementation matrix. It's kind of a unique strategy by just like identifying certain action steps that as a group we all feel are really innovative, or a bold step could be a bold step forward for Smithville over those 10 years. So that's the supplemental icons that you'll see within the implementation matrix too.
And I would say too, the idea with the time frame is to provide kind of, at this current point in time, our perspective of how we think things might line up. But as we know, things change, priorities change, opportunities change. So we want to make sure that we kind of don't lose the forest through the trees too, whether it's a year from now or, if there's something that makes sense at different time periods, it's certainly kind of, flexible. And it's all about just kind of achieving what makes the most sense and where there's kind of the most wind behind your sails and that you're able to achieve.
I have a question for the EDC, and I'd love to kind of hear some input from you all. How plan, was there anything, or even if you haven't read the 108 pages, as you've engaged in the dialogues of the task forces and on our portals and discussion boards, is there any element of the economic development component for Smithville over the next 10 years that you feel wasn't really represented in the comp plan or in conversations that you maybe expected to be more of the dialogue and didn't? On the flip side, was there, anything that we've discussed or covered that kind of caught you by surprise and you're glad we included? Either way.
Leslie, I think it was beneficial to really include the lake. As we all know, it's part of Clay County, but the city of Smithville gets zero revenue from that. Now, they may come into town and spend money at the restaurants and fuel and different things like that, but the overall revenue stream goes to Clay County as a whole. So I was glad to see that. The niches that you talked about. Again, I don't think you left anything out. I mean, this is comprehensive.
I was really glad to see you, and you referred to it several different times to refer to tourism and addressing that. And I think it's something that there just haven't been resources, honestly, to address it, but I feel it's necessary, and that ties in with the lake and the trails and those other pulls to the city. So I was glad to see that. It's interesting to figure out how all that's going to happen, but I want to make sure that it's on the radar screen and that we don't lose focus of it.
I was going to agree with Carol, or I'm agreeing with Carol. I was going to pretty much say the same thing, but I was very impressed by even just the comments that we would make on the Zoom meetings, that you guys incorporated that into the next. You guys listened to us, and it was very much appreciated to include the things that we came up with. So I was very impressed.
Off the top of my head, I can think of a couple of things that I know I was particularly, passionate about, or that kind of tweaks my interest that I see here. And so just kind of speaking off the cuff, one thing that we work with all day long, there's a couple of us have talked about this, is Main Streets. And so we're really excited about the Main Street downtown, and there's just so much opportunity there. And now is the time of understanding kind of what's the role, what's the programming, how does this all interplay. And I would say, and it's funny, even going through of like, oh, this could be, as outsiders, like having fun, this could be a place for Main Street, this could be a place for Main Street. But I do want to caution, there's limited capacity, both in terms of, Alicia and just human capacity, and in terms of resources. And what's really easy to happen, especially with the new nonprofit that's figuring out a way, is throwing it at everything, and then nothing, so is able to kind of have the full breadth of capacity behind it. And especially for a new Main Street that's, forming its relationships, that's building its operational stability, that needs to spend time doing things like fundraising and advocacy and all these different things that you don't even realize, and just meeting its constituents, that's more than 50% of the time right out of the gates. So I do think, and the same could be said for Chamber of Commerce and other players, of being deliberate with what is the role of these partners, and not just assuming, oh, good, we have a name that we can point to that's going to do all these things, because that's just not how it works. And that really comes from not only being deliberate about that, but then also what is kind of the will and the interest of those organizations, and then you really get some cool partnerships. So that's just something that just kind of comes to mind, that we've seen a lot, to set fair expectations, to not overburden certain folks who are on this call, and I'm sure it applies to other organizations that we're not even thinking about. So that's kind of one aspect of kind of looking at a couple of your faces on the call that comes to mind. Another thing that I'm particularly interested in terms of opportunity here, and as it relates to the economic development strategy that was put together in 2016, and I think Nikki hit the nail on the head in terms of that being ahead of its time, but really some good bones to help inform. A lot of the due diligence and the legwork has now been done to help decision making moving forward. Something that really kept coming across in the conversations is there an opportunity to leverage the proximity and location of Smithville regionally, to leverage things like airport redevelopment, to leverage really kind of key industry growth sectors. And it's one of those things that's aspirational, but possible. And the kind of mechanics as we kind of see it in the comprehensive plan is there's some real estate that's particularly valuable in terms of being more proximate to the road network in the airport, being kind of south of a lot of the residential areas, so you're not kind of burdening, traffic or so forth through the city. How does the city define exactly what type of industry, what kind of watermark or threshold is the city willing and interested to provide subsidy or incentive to? And then secondly, once the city decides what is that threshold, then what are those incentives that the city wants to give? And we lay that out to some extent, to a very minimal extent. The economic development strategy really kind of provides that menu of options. The city's now articulated, okay, here's the potential kind of arrangements or incentives that exist. And so I think a next step could also be understanding, okay, when specifically, is it based on if an employer is able to bring this many local jobs, this much net tax revenue to the city, that then we're willing to move forward and incentivize with X, Y, or Z based on what the city has as its disposal. Those are really exciting and really tangible. Like, that's it then. Like then you're really making significant moves in attracting certain employment base. And we think that you have the conditions to play there. And again, it's aspirational, but realistic too. And that's kind of the perfect balance. So that's another thing that excites me. And again, on the capacity side, what a lot of municipalities do is have a dedicated person who is at that touch point, having those conversations in terms of being able to reach out to folks. Again, that's not in most folks' job description. That can take a lot of time in ways that you don't see. So, to what extent, who are those players that would dabble in that space too? So it's just some things that I know that we've thought about that the Economic Development Committee might want to think through, moving forward as well.
I think those were all very fair points. Especially related to Main Street. I mean, I think even as a city, we've hung our hat on the fact, oh, Main Street will deal with that. Main Street will deal with that. Well, we are Main Street, we're all Main Street. And Main Street doesn't exist without the support that we need to provide for it. So that's just a great kind of cautionary tale that we all need to be careful of, for sure.
Yeah, well, and support takes two forms. There's the financial support, because a lot of programming, just in terms of sustainability and being able to prepare for operations for the next year and programming, it's the money, but also the Main Street model is really predicated on partnerships and volunteering too. So it's also kind of the man hours of people's participation in partnership as well.
I think we've got a really good start on that. And honestly, the look of the downtown already has helped. The look of Main Street has helped with that process. And I think that has helped with the visioning with the community and helping them see further down the road and see the potential that maybe they couldn't before. And so we're really doing a pretty good job at building those relationships with other community members that maybe weren't participating in the past. And it's going to take a little bit of time, but I really feel like we're going to get there, and it will bring the entire community kind of on board as we get this downtown, this Main Street area up and moving. I think it's going to really help everybody see that there is more potential elsewhere as well.
Yeah, I agree. You guys are doing the right things.
Who's responsible for what? When you look at the players that we've listed, especially in the economic development section, you'll see there are very, very few action steps where we've only identified one player. So there is going to be a substantial amount of discussion ongoing throughout the next 10 years, even on who's responsible for what. One of the things that we have heard so much from Smithville through the various forums is just the importance of collaboration between different entities. And there's such an appetite for that right now. And we've been very, very impressed throughout how these different boards and committees work together, how the Main Street's at the table for the EDC, the Chamber's at the table for the EDC. Sure, the comprehensive plan works to continue that into the future too, as these boards and commissions and committees change over time. So that was just another kind of key point too. When I know we did include Main Street on a lot of these steps. We did include Chamber on a lot of these steps. This idea of the players is really about making sure that, you know, all the right people have a seat at the table for those conversations and opening the doorway for more conversations and more collaboration. It will be interesting to see in Smithville how this plays out over the 10 years on kind of who spearheads which of these action steps and kind of get into this at a more granular level. And for Smithville and your growth and this energy for, you know, really controlling your destiny as a city over these 10 years and being very proactive in decision-making and planning efforts too.
Well, I think that whether there's more tonight or at a later date, like Leslie and John said, the document has been emailed, and I emailed it again tonight. You know, when they say they're looking for feedback, edits, comments, like Kelly said, it will be integrated. I mean, if there's something in there that's still off or that we want to make a comment on as a committee, we've got a little time after the meeting as well. So for sure, whether, you know, we can keep the conversation going or just let everybody know that the follow-up opportunity is available too.
Yeah. If we could have your comments by November 3rd, that would be really great. The final document's going to the Planning Commission on November 6th. So that's kind of our cutoff date, just so you know.
Yeah, and that's so helpful too, because, and I think you put it well too, because I'm sure there are some things that are a little off too, you know, and no matter how, you know, when you have 108 pages, there's going to be something that was either the, you know, whether the wrong word or not quite the right framing. So we're definitely leaning on you guys to, you know, help make sure that this is as tight and accurate as possible.
Well, and it's a living document. So, you know, we'll spin off of this with our EDC, whether it's a plan or just kind of a strategy. It will grow from this document as well. Anything else from you all? Anything else from you all needed?
That feedback, if you all have comments, there's several ways that you can provide that feedback. You can send that feedback either to Nikki or Jack or Cynthia. They'll get that information passed on to us. John, Heather, and I were all CC'd on the agenda for tonight, so you can access us by email. We also have a place on the portal where you can post a public comment too if you wanted to, and for all to see. Different areas or through different ways that you can get us that feedback over the next week or so.
And maybe one other plug and follow up is that rolling basically out right after this process will be an update to our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And we're very excited to keep working with Future IQ through that process. I mean, they've gotten to know us a lot by doing the strategic plan and the comprehensive plan. And so they plan to partner with Parks and Recreation, kind of take JSA out of the picture and replace them with a group that specializes on the park side of things. And that will be another chance of opportunity in the process to continue to get kind of more involved on the park and recreation side of things. So that will be, I think, really excited. And a lot of that ties really closely in with the tourism and the lake recreation focus that we have as an EDC.
Yeah, we're very excited to get started on that. That'll be a lot of fun. And this document really creates the foundation for that too. So it's exciting to extend it.
Did the document also take into account the public comments that were made? I think I replied to a few of them. Is that,
Yes.
is that the same?
Off the portal? Yes.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Okay.
Yes, definitely.
Well, then, Heather and John and Leslie, you are welcome to hop off or stay on for the rest of our meeting, either way.
Thank you so much. I think I'll hop off. Okay. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, they have been putting in their time with Smithville evening meetings for sure, and will be again on the Planning Commission meeting and the Board of Aldermen meeting. So it won't be the last time that you all see them, but I think you can tell, and if you've seen the document, they really took, especially this committee's feedback, into consideration. And honestly, you all as a committee had really the best participation of any committee. I mean, you guys showed up, you gave meaningful comments, and I know have put a lot of time and conversation in on this too. So it's very appreciated, and it really does show in the document. So again, next step on that process will be going to the Planning Commission and then ultimately the Board of Aldermen for approval, hopefully in November. I won't pull up the screen again, just because there's really nothing to see again until the dashboard. But next I had on the agenda some different reports from city staff and from the basically from Carol, from Dr. Schutz, and from Alicia, if they would like to. Maybe first, as an overview from the city staff report, I will give an update to our statistics once we get to the dashboard portion of the meeting. But I think you will see that we have really good activity and really good statistics from an economic development standpoint in Smithville. I mean, it's just so interesting to see how COVID has impacted the broader economy compared to especially our local economy in Smithville. And I mean, it appears that our community and our type of city is the type of city that's being successful in today's economy because we're local, people have been staying home more, and it shows in our sales tax and our use tax information. Also, you all have been seeing the construction, and some of you have been involved with kind of conversations on the side with prospective businesses, groups looking for land in Smithville. I mean, from an EDC perspective, it has been just a super busy year, and you'll see that in some of the stats coming up. So just one other note that I wanted to be sure to mention is that the board adopted the 2021 budget in last week's meeting. And the good news is that overall, kind of in line with our overall economy, we were able to pass a budget without making any major cuts to services, and even projected some revenue increase on the property tax and sales tax side. So again, that's something that not every city is experiencing. A lot of them are really having rough budget years. It is a cautionary tale because, of course, depending on how long coronavirus goes on and what happens with the economy, I think everybody's saying that we're really worried about 2021 and 2022 when we talk about the outlook. But from a budget perspective, we were able to maintain some really important economic development items in the budget. One would be is that we do want to continue to work with Visit KC going forward. That's one that we really started rolling, and then of course coronavirus hit, and coronavirus has just rocked the Visit, Convention and Tourism Bureau's worlds, just kind of turned it upside down. But as far as bang for the buck, we've only paid $750 to belong to that. And once events start going again and kind of the tourism side of things start up again, then this is really one of the best investments of our money. And then probably the next most important investment in the city budget is a continued investment to Main Street. So we will continue to commit dollars to the organization. Of course, Main Street is having, different conversations and strategic planning, but when we talk about things in the future, like potential tourism expenditures, different kind of trainings that are required, and some of the other goals that come out of Main Street, then the city is planning on funding some of those different activities. So we will be able to fund a modest amount of our activities going into the 2021 budget. All right, Carol, do you want to give a report from the chamber?
Sure. And I know several of you hear a lot of these things kind of on a regular basis when we do our luncheons, but and to kind of echo what you were saying as far as economic development, our membership numbers have not decreased at all. We've really seen new members joining. I have potential members talking to new businesses and so forth. So that's very encouraging. I mean, of course, there was a period of time where everything was kind of quiet, but it didn't take long for things to kind of pick back up. So our membership numbers, honestly, for the chamber are relatively, similar to what they were last year. In the last year, I just kind of did a quick search. We've gained over 40 new members since the October meeting last year. And I don't know if any of you were present for, I know several of you were for the ribbon cutting with Governor Parson last week. Some new and exciting businesses, I feel, and different. And I feel like those kinds of things, bringing kind of more attention to Smithville, have been great. So to kind of go along with the Main Street thing, I've been helping that board kind of move things along and just kind of get things up and running with their bylaws and some of the administrative things that, so trying to kind of help them move that process along to get them where they need to be to keep moving forward with that process. So I've kind of been doing that behind the scenes to some degree. We have had, of course, a lot of our events canceled throughout the summer, but I see that starting to change. We've had several ribbon cuttings. The Haunted Campground event was just held last weekend. We have another ribbon cutting this weekend. We'll do a small business Saturday promotion, mostly with the Main Street businesses, but that's something that we started last year as part of that national program, and we're planning to do that this year as well. We've got a marketing kind of campaign that we're trying to get together. It's a discount card that will promote many of our local restaurants and retail businesses. And we're planning to do our Candyland Christmas event, which always brings a lot of people to the area. Sometimes it's surprising to me how many people. We have over 500, that's just kids that will come and sit on Santa's lap. So most of them have mom, dad, and grandma and grandpa and everybody with them. So we are planning to do that. It'll be a little bit different. And we do it over 2 different dates to kind of spread things out, but we're planning to do that. And then as long as we can kind of figure it out, we'll still do the mayor's Christmas tree lighting and the lighted parade. I think we're going to change up the order a little bit as long as that works out. But trying to do all these things safely, and as long as we can be outside, of course, that's helpful as well. But starting to get back into that, doing events and community gathering in maybe just a little bit different way. So that's really all I have, unless you guys have any questions.
Dr. Schutz, do you want to share anything from the school?
Sure. And like Carol, many of you have heard this pitch. Did we have a chamber meeting last week? I think we did, didn't we? Is it that recent?
It was 2 weeks ago.
Well, it's kind of the same story. We spend most of our time on COVID related issues. I really don't know what all we did with our time before there was COVID, or how we ever had time to do much of anything else. So that's what we do, and it's a full-time job. But you know, kids are worth it, and certainly our staff is worth it, and we make it work. That's one of Wayne Kruger's favorite expressions, and he uses it all the time. You got to make it work. So our numbers, if you go onto our webpage, if you haven't already done this, you can see our dashboard right off of the main page. And right now, we have had 41 cases since the start of the school year. But when you think about the fact that our school community is 3,000 people, that's pretty low percentage. And in the week that last week, we had 9 new cases. So that's manageable. We can work with that. Of course, we prefer that be 0, but we can manage that. What's really a struggle is the quarantines. And last week we had 87 students that were in quarantine. So when you think about what a teacher does, they prepare their lessons for their students that are going to be there with them that day. And I'm talking about secondary teachers, grades 7 through 12. Then they have to also plan for those kids that aren't there that day. So there's 2 preparations. And then the third is they have to prepare for the students that aren't going to be there at all. So the kids that are in quarantine. So that's 3 preparations for any given lesson. So when we have 87 of these students, you know, that's going to be potentially several kids from every classroom, or a handful. That, you know, that becomes really, really taxing. So our numbers, our quarantine numbers for the dashboard will be updated tomorrow. So our numbers have come down significantly. I don't have them right in front of me. We have a lot of kids rolling off of quarantine, and we'll be back in school. So that's a good thing. Many of you have also heard me say that of the cases that we have had that are positive, very, very few. Off the top of my head, I can think of 1 case that was transmitted within our school community. So that's a really, really good thing. Our protocols are working. You know, our kids are, you know, in many cases probably safer at school with their mask on, with our protocols, and then we would be out running around, you know, with their friends. So that's a very good thing. They're able to socially distance, which is what the hybrid schedule, its greatest benefit is we can spread people out. We had a student at the middle school that tested positive, and they went through her schedule and they went through her day, and it turned out not a single student had to be quarantined as a result of her testing positive because she wasn't within the distance required. If we had all 425 students at the middle school that day, we probably would have had to quarantine at least 6 students. So, you know, there's a lot of things we don't like about the hybrid schedule, but it does provide for that. Social distancing provides for it very well. So that's a good thing. Having said that, we really want our kids back, and we really, that's our best opportunity to do our best work is when our kids are in front of us. However, we have to commit to doing that safely. We are talking about what it looks like when we start to roll back. If you look at our county numbers and you work with our county health department, the gating criteria for schools, we're actually in the red, which means we should be closed right now. Luckily, our health department's not pulling that trigger and requiring that. And, you know, for reasons I mentioned earlier, our kids are safer here at school than they are out running around with their friends. I'm glad that that's not being imposed upon us right now, because I think, as I said, we are doing a good job. So, but we have to look down the road. How are we going to do this? And so we're talking about kind of a half step or a quarter step, potentially in the second semester. And we would do something differently, probably with our virtual Wednesday, where we don't have any secondary students at school. So we would do something different with that and actually be bringing kids back on those days. So we're working through that now. My point to you is just to know that we're looking down the road and working on a vision for when we, can do more, can do more with our kids physically present. So that is the biggest stuff that's going on in the schools. The community was gracious enough to pass a couple of ballot issues in August, bond issue, and we're getting ready to move dirt for those projects. Eagle Heights, that'll be happening here soon within the next couple of months. And then early in the spring, we'll be breaking ground with the Activity Center project. And then the other ballot issue that passed moved some money from our debt service levy to our operations levy, which we didn't know COVID was coming, but I'm sure glad the community approved that because it's allowed us to deal with expenses for COVID, much more. So I'll stop there. I could keep going, but I'm not going to, and you probably don't want me to. So I'll stop there unless you have any questions.
Dr. Schutz,
Go ahead.
I just want to say you guys have done an amazing job. From a parent standpoint, I think you guys have done excellent.
Thank you.
Above and beyond.
I will echo that. I was just thinking the same thing. Thank you so much.
Yes.
I know the hybrid model is not your first choice, but it is. It's really the only solution that I see that makes it work, and we're all making it work with you. And thank you. I know you guys are all putting in a lot of time.
Absolutely. Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, Dr. Schutz, just a real quick question. Have you guys had the ability to access any quicker testing? I mean, and I just asked that because I'm hopeful you are at the school level have that access to quicker testing than sending it off and waiting 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Great question. The state of Missouri, DESE has acquired some CARES funds that they purchased a whole lot of the rapid testing kits, and they're like the 15-minute test, which is supposed to be 85% accurate. They offered those to school districts, 1 per student, 1 per staff member. We struggled with that offer, not because we didn't want the rapid test opportunity, but you have to have the appropriate PPE, which is pretty extensive, I guess, for this test. And you have to have a location. As I study this is what I'm informed at this point. You have to have a location separate from your students and office workers. So I'm not sure where that would be. And then you have to have the biohazard waste disposal types of services with that. And I don't think the service we have now for blood and things like that would suffice. So we're going to need an additional service. So we didn't know if we could really use this. And then if you have someone that you think might be positive, we don't want them at school. We don't want them around. We want them to go get a test. So we decided to go ahead and get some of these though, because what if there's a student whose family didn't have the means, and we were their only hope to get whatever information they could get. And then also with staff members too, to get quick information on staff members could be beneficial. So Dan, we got 500 of those tests, and we're going to have to work through some logistics as to how we're going to administer them. But we have a lot of great neighbors, neighboring school districts in the Northland. We've been talking about this and how school districts can partner. Many of our neighbors are much larger than we are and have larger, bigger budgets. And they're employing 1 person and 1 specific location that they can secure for this. And they also have the waste disposal that's appropriate for this. So it might be that our solution is to work with, North Kansas City or Park Hill or Liberty.
Would that be an opportunity to work with the fire district or NRAD since they have the capabilities to dispose of that stuff?
That's a great idea too. That is a possibility, Mayor, and something worth exploring. The point is that we got we're getting the tests, and we'll have to work through some of these logistics. That's another good idea.
One thing that just came to mind as you were talking is that so many of us around the table are employers and parents, and just the stress we've been going through, I think not only as working with our employees and quarantine and potential positives. I mean, that's been just exhausting, sad, confusing, all of the above. And so, yeah, I think we all just need a moment together to kind of recognize how hard that's all been. And then you put like your own kids into the mix, and it's like,
yeah, I've got an 11th grader who was quarantined for a period of 2 weeks, and it was absolute torture on him. Think about when you were a teenager, if you were confined to your home, and for him, because I was the one that had it, he and my wife, he was confined to a different level of the house and really couldn't interact with his family because the rest of us were on the upper level. So he suffered. It was emotionally, very, very difficult for him. And but this, to your point, Nikki, this is hard on everybody.
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter what industry you're in, if you're a parent or not. It presents challenges for absolutely everybody.
Yeah.
We are coping. Schools are coping. Our teachers are kind of getting the hang of how to maximize, their instruction and take advantage of what resources they do have. Masks really aren't a big deal anymore. I mean, it wasn't very long ago that, people rebelled on, whether to wear masks or not. Now, if you're in the public and you don't have a mask on, people look at you like you're very, very strange, and people don't appreciate that. So we are coping, and we're managing, and that's a good thing. That's the kind of reflection that makes you proud to be an American. So it's hard. But we're making it, and not everybody's happy with what we're doing, but that really isn't different than any other day on the job for me. Any given time, there's a handful of people that think I'm brilliant, and we're just doing a great job, and then you stop somebody else in the grocery store, and then we don't know what we're doing, and we're all idiots. So but that's okay. We're big boys and girls, and we can take that. We'll just keep plugging along, and as long as we mind that decisions are centered around what's best for kids, then I can sleep at night.
Alicia, if you want to share anything kind of as the chairman's report, anything to add?
I just kind of wanted to plug the Main Street bit. Since they touched on it earlier, we are working really hard on it. We do appreciate everyone's help that has been able to. They do have some beneficial information that is helpful just for people in general. I mean, just little bits here and there that could go for just anyone who needs to fundraise or anyone who owns any kind of business. There's a Mornings on Main webinar that takes place Wednesday mornings. So I'll send the link out to the group. I think you just have to register the day before, but it's free. And I think Carol's been on a few, and it's been helpful. Some weeks it's interesting, and other weeks it may not apply. I think that's really about it. Just everyone really did shop local lately, which we all appreciate. Small Business Saturday is coming up. It's always the Saturday after Thanksgiving. It's the day after Black Friday. A lot of the businesses will be doing events for that. We love anyone that wants to help cross promote anything in town. And I think the only other thing, Humphreys Bar and Grill, word on the street is they are having a very unofficial soft opening this Saturday, Halloween. They, I don't know, are completely ready in their minds no one really is when they're opening a business, I don't think. But they didn't want to cancel their band. So they do have live music coming. And we're all really excited to have another restaurant option in town. I think that's it. I had a whole list, but everybody kind of already touched on some of the things I was going to bring up. So thank you all.
Well, that is perfect timing for kind of the main piece of business for the EDC tonight is to elect a chair and a vice chair. And for those of you that have been around a couple of years and those of you who haven't, you know, I'd say on this committee, there's not a whole lot of, I'd say, extra work that the chair and the vice chair need to do. It's kind of a more symbolic position. Probably the main thing is that I work with the chair to set the agenda for the next meeting. So like this past year, especially a couple weeks ago, I've been working with Alicia and saying, what do you want on the agenda? Am I missing anything? And just kind of touch base. The other kind of primary focus of the chair is to help recruit new members. So for example, Gerald, who's joined us now, sorry we missed you earlier, but he had some personal family business come up. And Callie, not only help recruit new positions, but also interview new positions before they join the EDC. And so those are probably two of the most involved ways that the chair and the vice chair assist. I would say on the EDC, honestly, you all have just as much involvement as the other positions, really in every other way. You're just all a very professional group. And I try to send out, you know, if there's opportunities, especially pre-COVID for lunches or for speaking events, I try to make sure the invitation goes out to everybody. But from a committee standpoint, you know, we do have an ordinance, and so we should comply with officially appointing a chair and a vice chair. If we just want to kind of kick it off, I was going to recommend that we maybe keep the chair in position only because basically with COVID, Alicia's really only been in charge for one meeting because all the other meetings have been part of the comprehensive planning process. We probably should talk about electing a vice chair only because it was Alderman Uladol, and traditionally the vice chair is held by somebody who's not a board member, just to give somebody else an opportunity. And because of course, Alderman Uladol is a lot busier now with kind of all his chair commitments. And so we haven't had a whole lot of time to talk about that yet, but that might be something I throw out to the committee, is that maybe we maintain the chair just because there really hasn't been a lot of activity this past year, and consider appointing a new vice chair. That way that vice chair can really kind of train and get ready this next year. And I would envision going forward that we kind of have a, you know, structure where vice chair, you know, usually becomes chair and then somebody else rotates in so they can shadow for that year. So definitely it's up to the committee, but that's just kind of a good starting place.
I have a thought, Nikki. I was thinking the same thing as you, in that Alicia really hasn't had, you know, much of an opportunity to lead the committee. I know, as you said, you've worked with her on some things, but I think that makes good sense. We haven't had many meetings, and if she's willing, you know, I don't know if you need a motion or if you want to do both officer positions at the same time. As far as vice chair is concerned, I don't know if any conversations have taken place on the committee, but I think Kelly Kabilski has been a member of EDC for a while. I'm not trying to punish her by nominating her, but you know, I can't think of many people who are as engaged and passionate about not just the commerce in Smithville, but Smithville in general. So again, not having talked with anyone, and I don't know what conversations have taken place, but I think Kelly would serve well in that capacity.
I'll second that.
Yeah, and I guess do you two accept those nominations?
I do. And I think, Kelly, you said earlier you've been on a year, but I think you've been on 2 years, actually. Yeah. You started at the same time that I did.
Oh, did I?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You did.
Flown by.
So it has flown by. Oh, my goodness.
Actually, yeah, I think it's been a little longer than that because 3 years ago, we had a completely different board. The only one left is Dan Uladall
Dan.
and Dr. Sheets was a school representative. But now Dan is an alderman, so he isn't going to be a chair or vice chair.
I accept if that's what I need to do. That's an honor. Thank you, Todd, for the nice words.
No, and I would second that as a board member. I would second that Alicia stay in her position, and that Kelly, if we need to make a motion, I guess first formally, but so I don't know what comes first, Nikki, the motion or the second.
Maybe we'll consider Todd's the motion and yours the second. Does that work for everybody?
Sure.
And we can vote together. You know, if you're all comfortable, we can vote for them like a, president VP ticket, or we can separate it out if there's any controversy.
I think we need time to plan our campaign slogan, if you don't mind.
Make a few commercials.
I think it would make sense if it's all right with you, Nikki, to just do it in the same vote. So I formally nominate Alicia Neff as president and Kelly Kabilski as vice president of the Economic Development Council.
Thank you.
And then I would second that nomination for Alicia being chair and Kelly being vice chair.
Any more conversation before we take a vote? If not, then we can say aye for those who agree.
Aye.
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 Voting on Zoom is weird. I'm sorry. It's very awkward. Any nays? And I had forgot before we voted, I was going to formally introduce Gerald. He was able to hop on. So if you wanted to wave and say anything, sorry to make you vote on your chair before you introduced yourself.
Oh, no, you're completely fine. Again, I'm Gerald Ellison. Thank you for having me. Sorry I'm late. Had a family kind of crisis thing come up, like I was filling in with Nikki and Lisa. My daughter got in a head-on collision, driver crossed the road a few days ago, totaled her vehicle. So dad is now her driver for a bit. And so I'm going back and forth. Fortunately, she was okay, and all the other drivers and everything, everybody walked away. So we're good. But my pleasure to be here. Looking forward to serving my community.
Thank you, and sorry to hear that again. I'm sure there's a lot of other people that feel like chauffeurs to their kids around the table. So, well, the last kind of most important part of the agenda, if you all are okay with it, is the quarterly dashboard. So I'll give you some updates on the local economic development stats. Let me share my screen here. Second. Okay, can you see that? Okay, hold on. Okay, you can all see that, right? Or no?
Yes, I can see it.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So one thing that I'm really looking forward to do and excited to work with the whole EDC is that once we revisit the economic development piece of the comprehensive plan, I really think we'll have a chance to kind of refine some of these dashboard measures. So, I've kind of been looking at these for the past 2 years, and these are really just indicators that are pretty standard and pretty helpful when you're looking at your local economy. But there are so many options. I mean, we could add to this something closer related to tourism, something related to Main Street. I mean, there's just a lot of different directions this could go. But kind of the most important ones we look at, one would be our residential and commercial permits. 39 residential permits, which at this point last year was 33. So we're really, really similar to this point last year, which honestly is a good thing because that means that we're keeping up to the same point kind of pre-COVID. And we've talked about this a lot. I'm sure the real estate agents around the table can share that 2 years ago, we had a record-breaking residential permit year. And now, I mean, developers are pulling permits as fast as they can buy and develop land for housing. We have way more demand to live in this community than we have housing available. So those residential permit numbers will continue to grow, but really are kind of about at capacity the way that you see them. Of course, if we start talking more about more density and eventually more multifamily, that's just even more residential permit numbers that we'll expect to see over the next couple of years. So I think, you know, as a city, we think this is a good number. It's a number we can keep up with. And, you know, I think growth at the pace that the community wants right now. On the commercial permit standpoint, if you all remember, prior to last year, we had no new commercial permits since Dollar General. So it was just, you know, for about 4 or 5 years, there was really next to nothing. And even the 7 official number that you see is kind of misleading, because the number of conversations that are happening right now with permits that we know are going to be pulled over the next, you know, couple of months even is going to just, it could double that number. So the 7 that you see in front of you is for the Herzog Foundation, which is a nonprofit going up by the Catholic Church, Shamrock Gas Station, Nottoway Valley Bank, Star Development, which is Marketplace for the strip mall that's going in, KCRV, White Iron Ridge, and then Shoreline Fiberglass Repair. And then of course, last year it was Taco Bell, Scooters, Porter's, Price Chopper, and then the KCRV building number 1. So like I said, those of you that, you know, definitely the mayor, Dan Hartman and others know that there's way more conversations being had right now than even what you see. But 7 is a number that we're really proud of and really reflects some really good development and specifically a lot of diversity in that development. Those are all types of businesses all over town, which is really exciting.
I have a question.
Yeah.
On the strip mall permit up there at the Marketplace, so that's just the one permit for the entire building, but there will be several in there. Do we know how many yet for how many spaces are allotted for that one building yet?
So it's white box. So somebody could come in and take the whole 8,000
Yeah.
square feet.
Okay.
Or
Okay.
somebody could do 1,000 and 1,000 and, you know.
Okay. I didn't know whether they had to specify that on the permit or not.
No. And right now the acre tenant's looking at doing about a little over 2,000 square feet.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I was going to say, Mayor, I think you've probably seen that more recently than I have. But yeah, we don't know who all will be who will be tenants in that space yet. One other kind of data point we've been watching is the special event number. And that is city special events where we have a courtyard reservation. So that means somebody specifically comes to town and reserves the space for an official event. You know, 8 is the number as of early this fall. There's a big old asterisk on that number because, as you know, it would have been way more than that if it wasn't for coronavirus. Some of those events might be moving or might have changed. But honestly, within the events that we've had, we've seen some really, I think, cool successes and cool successful events, particularly the bike race. So this was, Mayor, was this number 4 or number 5? The 3rd year of doing it, I think the 5th race?
It was the 4th race because we combined May and September. We had a virtual race in May that people just kind of showed and went on their own. Yeah. So officially 4th and 5th together, or sorry, 3rd, yeah. So 5th and 6th, yeah, 4th and 5th together. Plattsburgh showed up big time. Their chamber did an amazing job. I didn't have to go to Plattsburgh once during the day, which is great. And after we paid for everything, we brought in a little over $5,000 for Parks and Rec.
Yeah, and that was.
I think at Chops alone, they served over 100 meals to cyclists. So.
Yeah. And that is just exactly the kind of event that not only can be safe during COVID, but is really unique to Smithville and really builds on that kind of recreational tourism aspect. So we've had some really successful events, maybe not exactly like they were, but modified. And I'd expect that next year, or even the year after that, that number is going to ramp up and beat prior year projections.
Yeah, and just for everyone's kind of information, we rent the courtyard for, it's 200 now, right? It was 25 before, or
Yeah,
something
I
like
want to
that.
say, I need to look it up. I want to say it's more like 400 now with the deposit and the reservation.
Yeah, so in the past, the amount of money, the amount of profit we pull off just the bike race alone trumps what we make off of youth sports, because youth sports is revenue neutral, and our reservations for the year in the past. So it's a big amount of money. That's all. If we continue to grow it, that would cover your guys' previous grant money that you had to spend.
Yeah. Sales and use tax, you guys, these numbers are huge. And man, I talked to other finance people, city administrators, mayors in the area, and I don't know that there's someone else that can compete with these numbers. A lot of this has to do with just growth in the community. So what you see in front of you is a percent over last year at this time. So it's the cumulative year numbers. So like on the use tax perspective, that is what we get on internet sales. And that's up 42%, which is just crazy. And, if we could somehow prove it, I think we could tie mainly it back to COVID. So because basically until May, we were lagging from the prior year. And then from May collections, or from May distribution, which was March collections and on, the community numbers just, we doubled in one month. And so that use tax is just a number that when people are shopping local and having deliveries to home, it's a number that really, really benefits a community like Smithville. From a sales tax perspective, we're up 17% over this point last year. And looking at the numbers, some of that is from new business growth. Honestly, in this year's numbers, there's not a whole lot of new business growth yet. By next year, when we've got Price Chopper and Marketplace, there will be a lot of new sales tax generating entities. But if you think about downtown, for example, and the new faces that have been collecting sales tax, even this past quarter, we've just seen a lot more sales tax activity. And most importantly, the largest sales tax payers, which again, we can't talk details in this kind of group because of proprietary data. But if you think about grocers, restaurants, and motor vehicle sales tax, those are all things that Smithville relies really heavily on, and that have been very, very strong during COVID. So we just expect this number to keep growing, and it's a lot of what's made businesses in the community really resilient during COVID. And then last, one other thing, kind of along with Carol's point that membership has really stayed up from a chamber perspective, we sent out 670 business license renewals. Those of you around the table who have businesses probably got one last week in the mail. But those numbers, so far, of course, we haven't heard from everybody yet on their renewals, but those numbers are definitely at or above pre-COVID numbers from a city business license perspective. And you've seen, I've tried to send you all numbers from the Kansas City area. And these numbers are just so different as you travel community and business to business. So we're really, really in a good position going into next year, just assuming that we can kind of all keep this up and, not get too tired from it all. So these are kind of the main indicators. And like I said, really hope to keep building on what kind of statistics we report on. Dan Hartman and I talked at one point about what kind of real estate numbers you could share. And we just need to circle back on that to see, he does a weekly podcast and Facebook posts. So there's a lot of indicators we could talk about, days on the market or different things like that. There's a lot of numbers we could be looking at, and for sure we'll want to revisit that when we talk about our strategic plan. So any kind of questions about those numbers?
I don't have any questions. I just say thank you again, because I think it's been amazing, the support from everyone for our local businesses.
Yeah, I've stopped by the Main Street meeting a couple times to let Alicia and them know. Those are real dollars, and those real dollars allowed the board to make some purchases this year that we might not have been able to get into the budget for a couple of years. And a couple of months ago, I was appointed the Clay County representative for Mid-America Regional Council, which is our, Nikki, 9 counties, every city in the metro, pretty much. Mm-hmm. So they had their board meeting today, and their economists going over the economic numbers for the metro. They're not anticipating getting back to pre-COVID levels on jobs and revenues until at least 2023. So we're fairly fortunate to have not taken that kind of hit.
Okay, yeah, anything else?
I'm just going to say, you know, Mayor, you know this as well as I do, and Nikki, and Smithville's on the map. We've got the attention of a lot of different industries, some exciting things coming up from a vocational standpoint. You know, we have talking every day to restaurant operators. We've talked in the past to hotel operators. Of course, that industry has been hit hard. I still believe in my heart of hearts we need some rooms here, but it's just exciting, and that bodes to, I think, our leadership, to our city administrator, to you, Nikki, to our EDC, our school. I mean, we're just shining in a time that people need some positive news, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I know Nikki mentioned White Iron Ridge earlier as one of those building permits. If you haven't seen their updates on Facebook, it's looking pretty amazing. They've booked over 100 events for next year. That's not cheap to rent that place. And it's real. That's going to be real revenue for us as well, because it's a lot of rental and liquor sales.
Are they? I think they're completely booked, really, aren't they, through 2021?
That's kind of how it is. They're doing, yeah, they started doing some midweek stuff, and
Right.
Nikki's heard some of the requests, and I've been fortunate enough to be part of them. I asked them kind of what their most expensive event is so far. I thought it was the one where they're bringing in a helicopter. It's not. One of the wedding parties is bringing in Cirque du Soleil. So that's a pretty big deal for Smithville to have those large events. We definitely do need rooms. Dan mentioned hotels.
If they get the Blue Band group, will you let me know?
Yeah.
How can we get in on this wedding?
Yeah, but this is going to be like, you know, these are 2-day events usually. Mm-hmm. So these will be people that will be in town shopping. They'll be downtown. You know, they want to have that, and Becky and Amanda from White Iron Ridge, they want people to visit our downtown. They want people to experience Smithville weather here, not just be out at the venue.
I think at some point, I don't know whether they're working to put together some sort of, I wouldn't say like a welcome packet, but like a brochure or something that kind of promotes some of their, or the local places to hit while you're there. So that's definitely something that will help with that too.
We need to put something together with them.
We do.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I need to talk about that. But we need to figure out where we're putting these people, because if they're just coming to the venue for the wedding and they're leaving town, we're going to miss them. So short term, if we can get some more VRBOs, some more those type of situations until we can get other accommodations.
Bruce
can we
said
Airbnb
they could
the
stay
chamber?
At his house.
Can we Airbnb the chamber?
Sure, absolutely. I've got 2 bedrooms here. We're good.
Yes.
Well, and along that same line, I have talked to a few people because our RV park has been booked. We are putting in the money to upgrade the rest of this, or upgrade a third of that this year, because we've had to turn away some people we've been fully booked though. But I have talked to people that plan on putting their RVs out there and Airbnb their RVs. So.
Actually, it might be kind of cool. I was just kind of thinking maybe in January, we could have White Iron Ridge. I mean, if we want to have them come as a guest to this committee, or as some of these other major businesses and developers, we can always have them and just here to talk about their business model, what they need from us.
Maybe we can have the meeting there.
I was gonna say, if you guys want to have a
yeah.
meeting, if you guys want to have a
that'd be
meeting
fun.
out there, I could message them and ask them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do kind of a walkthrough, and you can socially distance there. It's pretty big.
I'm sure
Yeah,
she
and-
would love that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something like the North Lane Chamber does a really good job of, is meeting at different locations and doing more ribbon cutting, which again, once we can all be back together, it'll make it that much better. But
Yeah. Well, and I'll say too, from just the whole perspective that we mentioned earlier with people from outside of the area coming to town, I get a lot of good feedback from people coming in from other communities to shop that they just say, as outsiders, it really looks like Smithville has it together, and they love our downtown, they love our streetscape, they love the stores. I always hear positive feedback from our out of town shoppers, so I think that really says a lot, that they think we've got it going on.
we do have it going on.
Well, yeah, us and our bump outs.
Hey, I will be. I'm happy to say that phase 2 of Streetscape does not have any additional bump outs.
Woohoo! I think you should double it for shoots.
But you do have a 10-foot wide trail to walk on in some areas.
Is the mayor calls it a runway?
Yeah, that's where we're going to start landing small planes. That's our new airport.
Yeah. Well, maybe kind of to wrap it up from there, kind of like I alluded to earlier, I would recommend, we've kind of shifted to a quarterly meeting with this group, just because it tends to be that the kinds of things we're working on, they don't happen in a month. And when we were meeting monthly, it just felt like we were kind of spinning wheels on certain topics. You wouldn't make much progress in just a few weeks. So I would recommend, once we get past the holidays, that we meet in January. So the next meeting would be January 21st or January 19th, 2021. There's a phone ringing in City Hall and there's no one here. Creepy. So if you're all okay with that, then I'll send out a meeting invite as it gets closer, and you can kind of mark your calendars for that date. And then in the meanwhile, we're not doing nothing. I mean, expect emails, calls from everyone around the table, just for all the exciting things we have going on.
That sounds
And
great.
Nikki, I might recommend that you have maybe 1 or 2 in City Hall for the next meeting, since our technology is there now.
Yes. Yeah. If everyone's comfortable, we can return, tonight it made sense with kind of the Future IQ and JSA to stay online. But if we were comfortable, we do have the space and the ability now, we've updated the AV in the boardroom, that we could remote in a few people and the rest of us be in person. So let's kind of see how that community count is going once it gets closer to January. And we could definitely accommodate a safe meeting in City Hall now.
I would rather be in person.
Yeah, yeah.
Same here.
Is that beanbag not comfortable enough for you?
Haha.
Okay, well, with that, any kind of parting words before we officially adjourn?
I think it's congratulations to the great leadership, and I'll just make a comment. I bring clients in town here and I drive them through Smithville. Everyone's so impressed. I mean, it just great leadership for being proactive. I mean, it's just awesome.
Ending on a
Right.
positive note,
Thank
that's
you.
fun. Well, if someone wants to make an official motion, then we'll make it official and go ahead and adjourn if everyone's ready.
So moved.
All right, everybody, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. It's really nice to see everybody. Everybody keep taking care.
Good night.
Thanks,